Good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Michael Rathburn. Welcome to the DFS Minute this morning, Monday morning. It's been a while. Think about that Stain song. I'm not going to break out any kind of karaoke because I can't sing for to save my life. But man, it has been a while. It's been about a week since we went off to FSTA, and then I came down with a pretty bad cold and didn't have any voice for about 3 or 4 days. So still under the weather, but I'm back and I'm excited. And thanks for everyone that wished me well. But lots of big industry news that took place over the last few days, over the last week or so. And we'll run down a lot of these. And a lot of these are from companies that have not really been around. So it's just very interesting to see the landscape of DFS and where it's headed. There's some big money coming. I'm going to talk about that. But let's talk about FSTA. There was a huge turnout in New York at the Crown Plaza, Times Square, and I can't imagine that they would ever hold a summer conference for FSTA outside of New York ever again. I mean, it had to be 400 to 500 people there. You start adding up the numbers, FSTA, is able to do bigger, better events and bring in more people. We were there Monday, Tuesday, left early Wednesday. It's not enough time. It used to be where there would be about 100 people maybe, and 2 days was probably enough for you to get around and talk to everybody that you needed to and say hi to everybody in the industry. It simply is not enough anymore. I left, glad of the partnerships that we've, in the relationships that we've developed here at RotoCurve. But at the same token, there's probably 10 or 15 people that I didn't even get to say, didn't get a chance to even greet, that I feel bad about. So, we definitely need to make it a 3 or 4 day event moving forward. And that way there everybody can get what they need done. But good times, seeing everybody, getting involved and everything. And I'm just excited to see where this industry is headed and where it's going. Let's talk about some of the news that's come out kind of at the top. The ESPN DraftKings deal, that was something that a lot of us were discussing, and what potentially was going to happen there. Were they going to hold out a little bit longer, maybe start the clock, in August, in September? But, there also was rumors that maybe the deal wasn't going to go through. And but the thing is the deal went through, kind of. DraftKings will be the exclusive partner, advertising partner on ESPN. They will be a top 10 advertiser, exclusive daily fantasy sports, but no equity stake from Disney. So, what that tells me is DraftKings is, my speculation as far as in some others, is DraftKings might be looking for a bigger piece here in terms of the amount of money that they want to go get or potentially can go get. And maybe this is all gearing up towards somebody making a run at the NFL. I still am of the belief that the NFL is going to stay on the sidelines, and if they do anything, they're going to do it on their own and they can control it. I still think that there is a big contention there, as far as the quote unquote gambling. But also I think the NFL smells money, and they're gonna do what they can to make the most that they can. So, so where does that kind of leave? DraftKings, it sounds like, over the next 30 days probably is going to look to do something big. As long as, as well as FanDuel, it looks like there's some big money that's going to be coming in, a couple of big rounds, monster rounds that are going to end up, kind of exploding daily fantasy here in this NFL season, where you're going to see branding unlike no other branding campaigns that you've seen before. So you're going to see these logos every single where you go. We're already kind of seeing it in subways and buses, arenas. Man, I'm telling you, it's going to be everywhere. They're just going to hit anywhere they possibly can where males are, ages of 18 to 40 pretty much dominate. You're going to be in shopping malls. You're going to see DFS ads. You're going to be on planes, TV ads, things like that. It's just, they're gonna go wherever they can possibly hit anybody that is that male demographic, or is a sports fan or a casual fantasy fan, or the goal here is going to be like getting everybody humanly possible. Let's get this market penetration running. And that was some of the things that FSTA talked about, the numbers explosion. We'll get into that in a little bit, but it's the numbers explosion really, I think, caught everybody by surprise at FSTA. The other big news is, excuse me, FanDuel officially partnered up with 13 NBA teams the Hornets being one of them. And I can kind of say that I was involved in the process with the Hornets. I did some consulting with them as far as the daily fantasy sports industry and how it works and who they should partner with and things like that. So that was exciting to be a part of that. And who knows? Maybe FanDuel is going to be running some promos involving Michael Jordan. You never know what's going to happen, but be on the lookout for that. I think it's going to be exciting. I think the Hornets are in position to really, really do some special things at that arena and with the players and the personnel that they have. The interesting thing I'll talk about, there's an interesting kind of wrinkle with one of the teams that FanDuel did a deal with another company that is now kind of making a jump into daily fantasy. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But as far as the FanDuel situation goes, branding in arenas like you've never seen before. There's going to be special like sports lounges set up. It's going to be pretty crazy. You're going to start seeing when you go into a sports book in Las Vegas, you see a lot of like little TVs and stuff set up. I think you're going to see little stations with TVs, with iPads, engagement. It's just going to be all driven towards, what they call in the brand marketing industry activation, which is taking a potential, customer of one platform and then activating them into another platform. And you get that activation. You're going to start seeing that word tossed around a lot in this daily fantasy sports industry. We see these two big deals, and definitely it feels like there's some more coming, not just in the sports arena, but I think just in any platform possible that like not just professional sports leagues and teams, but just shows, video, any kind of content that's out there that's drawing huge numbers. Podcasts, video shows, networks, things like that. I think the money is going to be ripe, and you're going to see some major spends coming up here in the next 30 to 60 days. Some of the quick numbers from FSTA, we did post them. Jason posted them in the Rotocore forum. The big one that you need to be aware of is that we've been throwing around this number of 41 million fantasy sports fans, fantasy people, playing fantasy sports. And we've been projecting it's going to go to 50 million over the next year or two. Well, it's not 50, it's 57. 57. It's gone from 41 million in the last study to 57. That is a huge, huge number. And what that now kind of gives opportunity for is that even though FanDuel and DraftKings have market share that is about 95% combined, the market is now bigger, which means even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% of a market is worth more now. And that number, from 57, how soon is that number going to hit 75 million? Is it going to hit 100 million? I mean, those are monster numbers, of course, but still, this 57 million number can easily pop to 75 over the next 2 years. So I think that's what investors are looking at. That's why you're seeing major companies getting involved or potentially going to get involved. And I think that's kind of what's going to happen with FanDuel and DraftKings. I think we're going to see some companies involved in these deals that are major names at the top of Wall Street, and maybe they may even surprise some people with the amount of ammunition that they're going to come. So that's kind of the big thing with the FSTA and with fantasy sports is that, what's the percentage? I believe the percentage was around 20. Don't quote me. It might have been 18 or 22 that are engaged in daily fantasy sports at this point. So even that's a big number. If you look at 57 and you're taking, say, 20%, that's roughly 10, 11 million. I'm not sure if 10 or 11 million are playing daily fantasy. That number did seem a little bit high, but maybe that is the number. I'm not sure, but that just spells big potential for what we got coming up here over the next few months in NFL. Some more industry news, more companies getting involved. A company called Latitude 360, which is a restaurant chain. It's more like a Dave & Buster's, but kind of a Dave & Buster's on steroids. It's kind of the new wave of family entertainment. And I'm kind of curious, I believe they have 4 locations already, and they're going to open another 4 very quickly. And it would seem to think that they're going to have maybe 20 or 25 throughout the whole United States, just based on something that I read. The overhead on these things has got to be immense. I think it's like a 75,000 square foot building. And so the overhead, I can't imagine. I know Dave & Buster's was very popular and exploded in the late 90s, in the early 2000s, and has kind of settled off and tapered off. I know some of them have closed. It doesn't kind of have that same appeal that it once had. It's, I think Dave & Buster's is kind of a stale brand at this point. They had a great concept, but they haven't really put much into it and advanced it. I mean, they still have the same games that they had 10 years ago when I went. And the menu is almost still the same. And I think, Dave & Buster's kind of a stale brand. Latitude 360 is kind of like that next brand of family entertainment. And it's pretty crazy what they've got going on over there. They got live comedy, they got bars, they got clubs, movies, bowling, game rooms, sports theater. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I'm hoping they build one in Charlotte or probably one in Concord. I can see one going up in Concord, which is where the big mall is. Here it's where the big racetrack is. And they got land up there. So I can imagine that Latitude 360 is probably going to be coming to Charlotte and Concord over the next year or two. But, just an incredible concept. And again, just a massive building. So Latitude 360 has purchased MLF, Major League Fantasy, and no one's really heard of them. It looks like they got a slick logo, slick interface, but that's kind of what they were selling. It's kind of what people have realized and said, hey, if two companies own 95% of the market, and I'm looking to be in this space, I'm going to have to do it differently. And if I'm looking to raise additional funding, I'm going to have to do it differently. And if I can become a platform and kind of almost like a licensing deal where I can now license my platform to a major company that can bring in huge numbers of users, that's a lot more attractive to the companies, the partners, and the investors. So that's really what MLF and Latitude 360 has done here. It looks like they used a gentleman to kind of bridge the gap and do the deal, and who's involved in like mergers and branding and things like that. So that's kind of how that deal came into place. But so Latitude 360 is going to have like iPads set up in the sports theater where you can engage in fantasy sports contests. And then what's eventually going to happen, their plan is to have a quote unquote like sports book or high roller room where you're going to actually play against people either on their platform, maybe in another restaurant, or live in the restaurant themselves, and they can kind of promote that. Very interesting. Excuse me. A very interesting concept. Not really sure how that's going to play out. Again, if you've got people in person in a venue, it's not a casino, which is another thing that we're not going to get into today. It's more of a state of DFS topic is fantasy sports in casinos. I think that's something that brings potential risk that some people are looking at versus if it's in a restaurant or a sports bar, the perception is much different. So, is Latitude 360 taking a rake? I didn't really, see anything of that, or a commission or a fee, or are they just providing it as entertainment for their customers to draw in a more affluent crowd? So we'll definitely see how that plays out. If they're not charging a rake, it's going to be very interesting. And I have a feeling that they're not going to. So I think that it's more of a, hey, come and play. Be engaged and have a chance to win some money, have a form of entertainment. But we'll see. My gut tells me Latitude probably, they did pay big money for this thing, but I got a feeling that they're not going to, this thing is not going to involve rake. I think they want to stay away from the gambling aspect, and they're going to want to pitch more of the entertainment value of it. So that be interesting to see. The other thing about this Latitude 360 MLF deal that I find interesting is that some of the shareholders in Latitude 360 are active NFL players. So again, we get back to, is that going to involve rake? And I think that the answer is probably going to be no. We know what the NFL stance is on fantasy football and gambling, and the whole thing that happened in Vegas with the event getting canceled. So I'd be very curious to see what's going to happen with the active shareholders in Latitude 360 who have now purchased MLF and are going to offer fantasy sports contests in their restaurants. So I'm curious to see if the NFL does anything with that, or if they can even do anything with that. So the other big news as far as other industry news is this company Draft Ops doing a deal with the Barclays Center, which involves branding throughout the arena and a deal with the Islanders for 3 years. And it's a pretty big deal. And here's the thing, so they get the branding rights in the arena for DFS. And, the Barclays Center not only is a sports arena, but also holds a lot of major concerts and events throughout the years. And, it's definitely bringing in a pretty high-end crowd in New York. Now, the funny thing about this is FanDuel does a deal with the Nets. So the Barclays Center deal kind of trumps the Nets deal in the sense that there's not going to be as much branding with FanDuel and the Nets in Barclays as there would in other arenas that they've done deals with. So kind of very interesting to see here. I think that more of this is going to play out. You're going to see more DFS sites doing deals with arenas and not doing deals with teams, so to speak, to try to get it up on the branding. Look, if you can cut a deal and you can get branding for 12 months instead of 3 months or 41 games, and you can get 12 months worth of branding instead of 41 games, that's something that's much more attractive as you're trying to bring in users. You're trying to bring in casual sports fans, entertainment fans. Let's face it, DFS might become DFE. And what I mean by that is, and it's kind of a crazy concept, and it's not something I've really talked about, but don't be surprised if we start seeing things like daily fantasy entertainment events. I'm just thinking about ways that these sites can bring in women, non-sports fans, and try to get involved in that engaging process. Let's face it, a lot of people do play the slots. A lot of people like action. A lot of people like to get engaged. Brands want engagement. Shows want engagement. There's Fantasy Movie League that came out, Matthew Berry, and that's starting to become popular. You've got people talking about Fantasy Bachelor. You've got a lot of these things going on. I'm telling you, man, daily fantasy entertainment is going to be the next thing. It's going to be off the chain. People are going to be hooked on this, and I think that's the next wave of what beyond DFS. Obviously, that's going to grow, but I think this DFE industry, I think there's going to be something to it. I think people are going to get involved in it. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but I definitely see some people getting involved in it. So we got the draft ops with the Barclay, and then also doing a deal with the Rich Eisen show for multiple years. So draft ops is kind of doing it in a different way. They've really got no action to speak of. Nobody plays on draft ops. So what draft ops has said, hey, we have funding money. Instead of trying to compete against FanDuel and DraftKings, what we're going to do is we're going to go out there and we're going to go buy up these partnerships. And then we're going to take that back to investors, because that's what investors want. Investors want to know that we're partnered with the right people that can bring numbers, that can bring eyeballs. And then we can turn around and we can kind of we can use that. Is what they've done is gone out, gotten these partnerships. That's where they're spending their money. And then they can turn around and try to raise additional funds. So they must have an inkling that they can have tap access to additional funding down the line if they put some of these deals in place and get some partnerships. Now, they've also got a deal with the Golden State Warriors. So you got draft ops coming in with the Islanders, the Golden State Warriors, Rich Eisen, Barclays Center. And really, they're not even a viable DFS site. Again, they're a platform. So these newer sites that are coming in are taking a much different approach at this industry than a FanDuel, DraftKings, or Feud, or Evictive, or a Fantasy Aces Draft Day, and that they're not really kind of playing in that. They're in the space, but they're not. They're positioning themselves as a platform more as, hey, I've got 100,000 players. So it's very interesting to see what these two companies are doing, and if that's going to be the wave of the future for what additional sites are going to be doing. Because let's face it, this space is getting very crowded. And if you're not in, like, say, the top 6 right now for DFS, pure DFS sites, it's going to be very hard. I mean, even if you're not, look, if you're not in the top 2, it's tough already. That's not to say that the sites 3, 4, 5, 6 can't make it. I think they can, but they're definitely going to have to do something different and grow with the market. So, these additional sites that are coming in, there's a lot of sites out there that are outside the top 6, outside the top 7. Where do they go? Do they shift gears and sell the platform instead of trying to, compete here for the fantasy football player, the fantasy player? So I think that's definitely a trend that we're going to see. Big money's coming, and we talked about it. Big money's coming in NFL, and what I think that's going to mean is I think we are going to see an explosion in college fantasy football this year. I think that college fantasy football is primed to explode. There's a lot of reasons why. The games start at 12 noon Eastern and play all day, all the way up until basically 12, 1 o'clock at night when you got your Pac-12 games going off. That's very attractive to people. You can play at 12, at 3:30, at 7 o'clock, at 10 o'clock. You can play all day long. You can take money that you've won at 12 o'clock, play it at 3, play it at 6, play it at 7. There's a lot of different ways that they can run college fantasy football, daily fantasy college football throughout. And I think that this market's going to be primed. The scoring is higher. It's more exciting. You can win on Saturday, play on Sunday. If you happen to lose a little bit on Saturday, you can win it back on Sunday. If you happen to win on Saturday, you can double down on Sunday. I mean, it's just, to me, I think college fantasy football in 2015 is going to explode more than I think if the sites put the money out there, the people are going to come and the people are going to play, and you're going to see people adapt to CFB very quickly. So that's kind of my take on that. Be on the lookout today for some changes over here at RotoCurve. With our programming, we're going to start putting out some more daily videos, some more video segments, instead of doing just a 1 hour live show 3 days a week. So be on the lookout for that with Benny and Josh, and we'll see how that goes. But good to have Josh back. Good to be back in the mix. And looking forward to Monday in DFS. And as we always say here at RotoCurve, stay classy, DFS.